a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon in Bloom Perfumery, East London, and for talking to me on my channel LucidScents. Tell us, what is your first scent memory?
My first scent memory would be the eau de cologne that my mother used to use for brushing my hair. And it's an orange blossom cologne that is very well known in Mexico. It's called Sanborn's eau de cologne, Agua de Colonia in Spanish. And it's a very simple fragrance, but actually a very beautiful orange blossom cologne. And it's very clean and soft and fresh, and I think that's why mothers like it for their kids.
And could you tell me, what kind of fragrances have you worn over the years?
I've always been, ever since I was a child, I was always somebody who was interested in fragrance. And I think one of my first fragrances was the Ralph Lauren, the green bottle, the Polo Ralph Lauren bottle. And I used to wear it as a miniature because my dad would wear the big one and I thought the kid size was a miniature. So that's what I would get. Then I actually wore a Polo Ralph Lauren blue, which I loved for the nautical thing. I also wore Nautica as a fragrance, so you see a pattern there. And then I think, I don't know if there were probably other things, but Gucci Envy was my first, let's say, adolescent, sort of like starting to feel a little bit more as a man fragrance. And I loved all the different nuances of it. It smelled very different to me than anything that I had worn before. I liked M7 from Yves Saint Laurent. The Jill Sander, that lavender violet liquid in that bottle that would tilt and move and fall all the time. Love that one, which was also very fresh. And so on, yeah.
Cool. Now, are there any particular brands or perfumers out there that you admire?
Well, first and foremost, I've always worked with Rodrigo Flores Roux and Jan Vanier, and I've always respected them more than anyone just because I know them and I know what really goes inside of their work and their passion. And I think it's that love of beauty and that passion for fragrance and passion for life that I think makes me appreciate the nuances of their work a lot more. Of course, that said, there's so many perfumers that are brilliant and so many brand creators that are brilliant as well. But really working with them and up close and personal, it's, I would say that they are #1 for me.
Yeah, cool. Could you please tell me what inspired you to create the Arquiste line in the first place?
Well, I'm actually an architect by profession, and my specialty is in historic preservation, in conservation and restoration. And so I've always been interested in buildings and site visits and visiting, especially historic sites. And usually when you talk about a historic site, when it's an old place, it carries so much more patina, so much more of a history behind it, and a lot of times scent is tied into that. And so it's kind of, if you're interested in fragrance, if you're interested in scents, and then you're interested in the stories and the architecture, it's kind of almost impossible to keep them apart. They're part of the same experience. And when I was working in New York as an architect, I was working for Ralph Lauren as one of their in-house architects, because we have a full-on architecture studio inside of the company. I was taking classes at the same time of perfume with Rodrigo Flores Roux. I had met him through friends, and we clicked as friends, and he offered to give me classes after a lot of convincing on my part. Of course, it wasn't easy. But being that the fact that we both were from Mexico and that I had also this strong interest in fragrance, and especially also in the history of fragrance, he decided to offer the classes. So after learning, when he was teaching me about the origin of neroli, why is it called neroli? Why is there a combination of leather with floral notes in a lot of fragrances? What is the heritage of that? If it comes from the leather gloves that we're used to. Although all those factors made me always think of my work as a preservation architect, made me realize that these were two worlds that were touching through history. So when I told him, like, well, if we do enough research into a specific story, into a specific place, to actually uncover all the raw materials, all the olfactive references that would have been involved in the experience of that place, of that moment, could you recreate it? And he said, well, let's try it. You tell me. You do research into something and tell me afterwards if that works. And this is where actually I think my education as an architect and what I was taught as an architect actually came to be, that even if you're looking into a story for the past, you're never going to actually recreate it exactly as it was, because it doesn't have that relevance now. And for something to be living in the present that comes from the past, it has to have a relevance today. So you have to treat it as a modern operation, as a very radical operation actually. So even if you're talking about history and heritage and all this, you should see things as your intervention as radical. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Let's research it as much as possible. It's fine, uncover everything. And once we get to that authentic thing, let's now actually be honest and use those things to communicate a new story, to launch the person in the story today, not make them smell like Louis XIV, but actually bring them to that moment and make it their own.